Most of us are familiar with fantastical worlds. They've been around for what seems like forever. From Lord of the Rings to Narnia to Harry Potter, we've no doubt grown up with many of these beloved works. These stories, however, have a darker counterpart. Though they all occasionally lapse into darker territory and themes, there is a distinct atmosphere that this counterpart revels in. It descends from 18th and 19th century Gothic literature. Works such as Horace Walpole's The Castle of Otranto, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and Bram Stoker's Dracula, and of course its later adaptation, Nosferatu, as well as Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher and Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House. The Gothic blended romance and horror, playing on that romantic castle setting, but shifted into a darker mood. A romance played out amidst an ambiance of mystery, fear, and the supernatural, oozing a sense of the macabre. It is this atmosphere that fascinates me so much about Gothic literature. Its aims aren't to create such visceral reactions as shock or disgust as much of pure horror, but to create a psychological tension, even through melodrama, essentially a heightening of the senses through isolated settings and exploration of inner darkness. This is the same effect that would eventually come to fantasy, creating an amalgamation of fantasy and horror. What we today call dark fantasy would be pioneered in the early 20th century by authors such as the mother of dark fantasy herself, Gertrude Barrows Bennett, who wrote under the male pseudonym Frances Stevens, due to the then male-dominated genre. Her stories, such as The Citadel of Fear and The Heads of Cerberus, along with H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos, deeply affected the genre and their darker themes and storylines. Modern iterations ran with these darker themes and created dark fantasy as we know it today, with its grim realism and morally gray characters. Some of my favorite of which are Michael Moorcock's Elric Saga, Glenn Cook's The Black Company, R.A. Salvatore's The Legend of Drizzt, and of course, George R.R. Martin's unfinished masterpiece, A Song of Ice and Fire. Any and all of these stories mentioned here are worth a read, and are clear literary forebears of Vermis, which is steeped in that macabre atmosphere and gothic tension. For Vermis, however, this is just the tip of its influences. Before I go any further though, I should explain what Vermis actually is, first and foremost. Vermis is a lore gamebook, a guidebook to a video game that doesn't exist. In their own words, a pure act of world building. An art book masquerading as a guidebook, chronicling the world of Vermis. Now this leads us to another of its primary influences, and that is guidebooks and early PC RPG manuals. There was once a time when games had to come with literary supplements to explain mechanics and complex systems, as well as the larger lore of the game world that you were about to inhabit. In this pre-internet age, the manuals that came with games were part of the overall experience. With the technological limits of the time, such as tiny memory budgets, there was no way to really include tutorials and explanations of all the systems and the larger world. Thus, manuals became a way to breathe life into the game and acted as an extension of the game itself, becoming not just supplements, but a core part of the game. Even after the need for manuals was long past, guidebooks served a similar purpose. They became a way for people to explore the game world, and even more than that, to play the game in their minds. In the era before Let's Plays and walkthroughs and live streams galore, guidebooks were an enormous part of the gaming industry, stemming from old RPG manuals, where the manuals were an integral part of the game. Guidebooks served a dual purpose. They let people experience a game without actually playing it. Yes, a guide was just that, a tool. But if you couldn't play the game, whether due to accessibility or cost, the guidebook became a game in itself. I still remember when I was a kid. I couldn't play the latest Pokemon game, which all my friends were playing at school. So I went home, took out my trusty, well-used, and well-loved copy of Pokemon Ultimate Handbook, which I had bought at my elementary school fair, and a notebook and some paper, and I played Pokemon in my mind. Using the handbook, I imagined that I was a trainer, battling and catching Pokemon. Now, I remember at the time thinking that this was just immensely nerdy behavior, and that I was likely the only person doing this. But then I found out that another of my friends was playing like this as well. Guidebooks, you see, allowed me and my friend to create our own stories. This era of guidebooks, however, would change, as did a lot of things with the rise of the internet. Of course, when I was a kid playing with my Pokemon handbook, this change was already well underway. Online forums and sites like GameFAQs, as well as the larger pivot to video-based media, meant that professional print-based guidebooks were becoming obsolete. Why would someone carry around a thick guidebook when they could just search up the answer online whenever they wanted, and even see a video of a person actually playing the game? This made obsolete not just the guidebook as a reference tool, but also as a tool of play, of imagination. Why imagine? If you couldn't play the game for whatever reason, then hey, why not just watch someone else play it? This is the bygone era that Vermis recalls. A guidebook to a game that doesn't exist. Because you don't need the game. All you need is this. Now, of course, this idea of playing a game via imagination is not new. Not at all. Enter Dungeons & Dragons and the world of tabletop role-playing games, the grandfather of modern RPGs. Before the age of computer games, when our imagination was all we had, TTRPGs gave our minds entire worlds to inhabit. Vermis might at first glance be equated with a kind of pseudo-TTRPG. In fact, you're most likely to find Vermis while trawling through such games. But the intersection of all these influences make it somewhat striking and unique. From TTRPGs to guidebooks to actual video games, it becomes not a source book like most TTRPGs, where mechanics and systems are laid out, as well as characters and lore of the world, but it takes a more narrative bent. It's a secondary source, not the primary text like most other TTRPG rulebooks. It creates a whole world, but provides no mechanical framework. Thus, I've seen the stories within Vermis be incorporated into other systems to add the mechanics on which the story is layered. Now finally, we come to the video game influences, of which there is one that is obligatory. But it's not just one game. Instead, it's a game developer, From Software. Vermis is heavily inspired by old-school dungeon crawlers, such as FromSoft's very first series, Kingsfield, and Shadow Tower. Now, as the name might suggest, dungeon crawlers are fairly straightforward mechanically. On their face, they're a type of fantasy RPG, where the core experience revolves around navigating some kind of dungeon, battling monsters, overcoming traps or obstacles, and collecting loot. The idea originates from dungeons which you traverse in TTRPGs like Dungeons & Dragons. This laid the conceptual foundation for video games to build upon. The first of these would be very rudimentary ASCII games, which would emerge in the early 70s to late 80s, such as Rogue and Telengard. And later the genre would evolve as technology grew, and we had legendary titles such as Wizardry and Ultima. They were both foundational dungeon crawlers that helped define not only the mechanics of early computer RPGs, but also the expectations of what role-playing games could be. Together, Wizardry and Ultima formed two complementary pillars of the dungeon crawler and RPG genre. Their design philosophies echo through later dungeon crawlers, CRPGs, and even modern RPG hybrids, making them enduring touchstones in the genre's evolution. Following in the steps of these works, in 1994, FromSoft would release Kingsfield for the Sony PlayStation. It took particular inspiration from Ultima Underworld, released only 2 years earlier. Both were fully 3D, first-person action RPGs, centered on dungeon exploration. But FromSoft included their distinct dark fantasy aesthetic, as well as their slow, deliberate, and unforgiving combat design. Although Kingsfield was not a mainstream hit outside of Japan, it laid a foundation for several sequels and explored foundational ideas, such as immersive worlds, hidden secrets, and challenges through environmental hazards that would later resurface in their modern RPGs. After Kingsfield, From Software released Shadow Tower in 1998, a related dungeon crawler that expanded the first-person RPG idea with new mechanics. Shadow Tower demonstrated From Software experimenting with tension, scarcity of resources, and environmental design that feels oppressive and mysterious, qualities that would be refined in the next generation of their RPGs. Its sequel, Shadow Tower Abyss in 2003, carries these ideas forward even further, adding complex enemy behavior and deeper systems. The next major step in this lineage was where the Souls-like was really born, with 2009's Demon Souls. Demon Souls took several thematic and mechanical strands from earlier works like Kingsfield and Shadow Tower and refined them into a third-person action RPG focused on challenging combat, limited guidance, and cryptic storytelling. While Demon Souls innovated the Souls gameplay loop that would define its successors, its DNA can be traced back to the design philosophies of From Software's earlier dungeon crawlers, particularly the emphasis on player discovery, risk management, and atmospheric challenge. They would continue to iterate and perfect their formula in Dark Souls, which is so evocative of that gothic and dark fantasy aesthetic that it's become the poster child for this particular kind of game, the eponymous Souls-like. Taking into account this trifecta of influences, guidebooks, RPGs, both video and tabletop, and dungeon crawlers, Vermis dives back into the past and brings back the old school. It's new and unique, yet also somewhat cliched, paying homage to the plethora of works behind it, but also paving a new path forward. Before we enter the world of Vermis, I'd like to thank you for watching. Your support means the absolute world to me. If you like what you're seeing, then please consider liking and subscribing. If you wish to further support me, I have a Patreon and a YouTube membership, both of which I'll link down below. Also, if you're interested in Vermis, I would highly recommend picking up a copy for yourself to support the creator. It's an incredibly beautiful book to read and own, and you certainly won't regret it. Now, without further ado, grab your drink of choice, and let's begin exploring the dark fantasy world of Vermis. A corpse kneels beside a well. Mesmerized by the reflection of its living flesh, it wonders what could have been done, and what could have been. And for as long as the moon shines, the feeble illusion will prevail. The game begins as a light sparks in the dark, and we are asked the question, which flesh is your flesh? There are two kinds of flesh, the good and the evil. The good is described as a light that will shine even in the darkest corners of the world, and which no darkness, however deep, can conquer. The evil is darkness eternal, infinite, unrelenting, and inescapable. We are then warned of the states which can afflict our flesh. There are 9 states: infection, dread, slumber, petrification, curse, insanity, blindness, possession, and white hives. After choosing if we are good or evil, we get to choose from 12 different classes, though I use the word classes here generously. These are not the traditional classes of your standard RPG, but are uniquely and incredibly evocative. The classes are as follows: Wandering Angel, Stone Scholar, Princess's Nail, Infant Seeker, Mad Pricker, Lost Old Glory, Waste of Life, Merc Sage, Ratman, Minor Knight, Prophet, and Cursed Fool. Each portrait is followed by a short description. After the brief overview, however, we are given a page for each class, further detailing more lore, starting items that each class carries, and their stat distribution. There are 4 stats: strength, intelligence, faith, and will. Each stat can have up to a maximum of 5 points. At the bottom of the page for each class, there is a circular disc with varying degrees of black and white. The black represents evil and the white represents good, thus representing each class's propensity for good or evil. The classes are described as such. First, we have Stone Scholar. This is honestly a very strange bit of creativity from Plastiboo. Stone Scholars have a stone tied to their faces. This causes them constant pain, but that sacrifice grants them what is deemed infinite wisdom. They are described as being experts on mud sorcery and are extremely intelligent, but have a fragile body. Also, a scholar without a stone is condemned to a miserable, pitiful life. They are unable to see or smell due to the scars from the rocks that were tied to their faces for ages. Removing this stone strips them of their knowledge and powers, and they are condemned to crawl in search of the enlightenment they lost. Stone Scholars carry a stone staff, which is a staff made of tiny merged rocks used to help scholars walk and cast spells. They also carry a stone bone. The stone bone is shaped like a vertebra and is inserted inside their backs as a sign of their devotion. Stone Scholar has 5 points in strength, 0 in intelligence and faith, and 1 in will. Stone Scholars are slightly more evil than good, a 60-40 split. Next, we have Waste of Life, expelled from every village and hated by everyone. Though he has been cursed multiple times and committed many crimes, he shows no remorse. Some say that this individual is not a human at all, but the very embodiment of all our flaws. All of his actions are driven by madness and greed. He is said to have escaped from punishment many times, but never learned a lesson. He carries around a beloved necklace, a likely stolen relic. Inside it contains the portrait of a young boy. He also carries a bone dagger. Waste of Life has a strength of 4, intelligence of 1, faith of 4, and a will of 1. Waste of Life is entirely evil, with perhaps some tiny specks which represent the minuscule potential for salvation contained within all beings. Next, Merc Sage. Merc Sages are masters of the illusory arts, bending shadows to create all kinds of nightmares within their enemies' minds. When the darkness is gone, their power shrinks greatly. They can survive with the little darkness inside their helmets, but without shadows, they're defenseless. Merc Sage carries what is called a Sage Disciple, a crozier which can also be used as a mace. It depicts the visage of a Merc Sage. They also carry a talisman called Moon Murder. If crushed, the moon will be silenced for a night. Its light will disappear, and that night will be pitch dark, enhancing Merc Sage's power. Merc Sage has a strength of 4, intelligence of 0, faith of 3, and a will of 3. Merc Sage is mostly evil. The next page depicts Merc Sage casting a spell. When a Merc Sage chants a spell, they raise their crozier and then swing it left to right while chanting the words. In this process, they're vulnerable to attacks. That's why they always keep their distance from the enemy or hide in the shadows where their power is enhanced. Illusions are at their most powerful when the victim cannot tell reality from reverie, wake from dream. That is when illusions take on a frightening power. Even if they are illusory, they are powerful nonetheless. Infant Seeker is a mother on a quest to retrieve her lost child, taken from her by a witch. In these lands, young children disappear often. The birth rate is low, and witches are in a constant search for the precious delicacy. The loving mother will not rest until she meets her child once again. Memories from brighter days are her source of determination. No matter how long and arduous the journey is, hope remains intact. She carries with her a mum doll, a small doll made of gray hair, and a wicker basket, used to carry the ingredients she gathers for her meals. Infant Seeker has a strength of 5, intelligence of 2, faith of 1, and a will of 0. She's almost entirely good. Lost Old Glory. Once a hero, now a lost soul without a purpose in life. Where are their beloved ones, the people they once fought for? Trapped in their memories, not able to process the past, the Old Glory wanders through the dark woods and forgotten villages, trying to find a purpose in life. They carry around with them a broken badge, a symbol of pride and a reminder of the past, and a witch tongue. The tongue, once separated from the witch, will vibrate in the presence of evil nearby. It is a valuable tool to tell friend from foe. Lost Old Glory has a strength of 1, intelligence of 2, faith of 4, and a will of 3. Lost Old Glory is also almost entirely good. Wandering Angel. These devoted knights are on a journey to join their beloved goddess in death. They have to travel all the way to a sacred mountain and then pull the halo placed behind their helmets to decapitate themselves. Their decapitated heads will fall off the cliff. A pile of helmets full of rotten flesh lies on the other side of the mountain. Gilak's servants are in charge of gathering all the equipment from the bodies and bring it back to the temple. Gilak, as we will discover later, is one of the known gods. Gilak the Cursed appears as a headless skeleton, with his decapitated head at the foot of the image, sprouting the body of what looks to be a snake. Wandering Angel carries around a Gilak statuette and a snake fang. Both of these items are emblematic of their faith to Gilak. Gilak, as we have seen, is often depicted as a snake with a woman's head. The snake fang allows the angels to pierce themselves to release a poison that makes them go berserk. Wandering Angel has a strength of 1, intelligence of 4, faith of 0, and a will of 4. They are represented as mostly evil. Princess's Nail. Their loyalty knows no limits. They are all their princess's tools to achieve anything she wishes. To defeat the crown's enemies, pursue unattainable treasures, or further peace or war. They will accomplish it, or die trying. The princess herself ties a lock of her hair to her loyal knight's swords, so they can feel her presence and love within them in every battle. Committed to their princess's wishes, the nails don't ever question their duty. They carry around with them a devotion symbol, a long sword handle with a lock of hair tied to it. They also carry a bone fermenter, a potion that makes one's bones extremely fragile. Princess's Nail has a strength of 3, intelligence of 3, faith of 5, and a will of 0. Princess's Nail is neither good nor evil. He simply does what is asked of him. Mad Pricker. Their origins are yet unknown. Some say they're some kind of cult. Others say they're merciless minions to an evil god. They wear armor full of deadly infected spikes, and their handcuffs don't allow them to hold any weapons. Rumor has it that their helmets are actually full of spikes on the inside, so they may not be chaotic and hostile for the sake of it. Instead, they're desperately seeking help in a constant torture. Mad Pricker is the only class to have one item. They are the iron handcuffs, covered with spikes. They are effective in melee combat and provide protection against sharp weapons, though they do not allow Mad Pricker to carry anything with her hands. Madperker has a strength of 2, intelligence of 2, faith of 3, and a will of 3. Madperker is the only class that has a question mark on their good and evil meter. Minor Knight. These knights are born and raised in the pestilent mines, which granted them a very high tolerance to toxins and sicknesses. Their senses have developed greatly. They can hear, smell, and see almost like a creature of the night. The pestilent mines were once a place that provided materials and goods to the capital and the lower villages. Occasionally they also hid secrets and knowledge from the old world, only privy to those who dare dig deeper into the mines. The miners carry scented oil fuel for their lamp. This slightly alleviates the smell of death that permeates the mines. They also carry glowing spores. They are used in the mines to mark the forbidden paths so the knights do not get lost or wander into dangerous territory. Minor Knight has a strength of 1, intelligence of 3, faith of 4, and a will of 2. Minor Knight is more evil than good. The description under Ratman simply states, "Become Ratman." Ratman was once a man afflicted by a curse, but with time he ended up losing his humanity. No memories of the man he once was remains. He's been wandering in the capital's sewers for so many years that he's become a fable to scare children. The items Ratman carries are of his own anatomy. His beast eye, capable of ferociously tracking any prey in the dark, and his beast tongue, infected with numerous bacteria. A single bite can cause serious poisoning. Ratman has a strength of 1, intelligence of 3, faith of 4, and a will of 2. Ratman is more evil than good. Cursed Fool. A brave warrior who faced a terrible loss. He found a mysterious whispering rock that told him the way to bring back his loved one from the dead. Since then, he's been a slave to the Whispers. The Whisper is known to be the remains of an ancient statue. Its edges have been polished by the hands of those who have handled it with mistrust. Some say the stone's whispers will guide its owner to achieve their deepest desire, while others think that those who listen to the stone are cursed fools, slaves to its whispers. Cursed Fool carries strength gauntlets, enchanted gauntlets capable of greatly raising the owner's strength. And of course, the Whisper. Legends are told about the Whispering Stone. Only the people who desperately seek the unachievable can hear it. Cursed Fool has a strength of 0, intelligence of 3, faith of 2, and a will of 1. Cursed Fool is neither good nor evil. The Prophet. The last member of a religion that was persecuted and eradicated by the crown. They worshipped the old world god Marco, the oracle. That granted them countless miracles and showed them grim prophecies of a dark future. Even though Marco was decapitated long ago, his mummified head can talk to those who know how to listen. Eventually, the visions start to show them a future full of death and decay. The prophet carries a Marco effigy. Since Marco's head was defiled, the effigy is one of the few remaining images of the god. The prophet also carries an incense bag. It contains incense used in prayers and purifying rituals. Prophet has a strength of 0, intelligence of 3, faith of 2, and a will of 1. The prophet is almost entirely good. After an overview of all the classes, we get a page depicting all the known gods. They are described as greater beings, deities far from our understanding. The known gods demand devotion, punishment, or sacrifice. Some are eternal, others are like kings upon gilded thrones, and others still are invisible to us. Yet they all shaped the world. They are Gylak, the Cursed, Dorvis, the Truth, Murgo, the Relentless, Gurvek, the Great, Marco the Oracle, and Ketereth the Wrath. We will learn more about the old gods throughout the book. After this page on the old gods, we are given the description of our first location, the capital's outskirts, Greengrave. The remains of Gervek the Great, known ominously as the Dead Man's Garden, has become one of the lasting relics of the old world, and has grown alongside the mountains themselves. This area is considered sacred terrain, and the influence of the relic is rumored to grant longer lives to the inhabitants of Greengrave. The wider world, however, is a stark contrast. The capital is a hotbed of chaos perpetually consumed by war. It is ruled by deluded tyrants, fools, and liars, driven by their own obsessions: faith, blood, and gold. Each faction believes its cause is righteous, convinced that every sacrifice is a step closer to the annihilation of their enemies. Yet, regardless of how far one travels from the fury of the powerful, our journey begins deep within the forests of Greengrave. And so it is where we find ourselves at the beginning of the game. Once you wake up, you find yourself in a small, isolated crypt in the middle of the forest. It's cold and damp, but feels somehow comfortable. After you leave the crypt, your first steps will follow the path to the graveyard. House of Grey, House of Cold, House of 1,000 doors, House of many, House of none, House of those no longer home. E.R. On the next page, we are told we might encounter the following monstrosities and to be wary of their presence: crazy bones, mad bones, talking skull, insane bones, witch head, shadow figure, bone creeper, ghost mother with newborn, mudman, bone snake, living grave, and lonely night. At the bottom of the page, we get a tip. A witch head is defenseless without her tongue. And remember, recalling back to the lost old glory who carries a witch tongue as one of his items. It vibrates in the presence of evil, which could come in handy. After traversing deep into the graveyard, we discover far from the other tombs lies an open coffin, which contains the whistling death, in the hands of its previous owner. It is named for the distinct sound it makes as it whistles through the air with each strike. We soon enter the high burial grounds. 2 robed statues flank the stairs that ascend to the graveyard's upper tier. The noise of the cold wind is deafening as you reach the summit. Passing through, your gaze is rewarded with the majestic sight of the entire graveyard valley, and soon after, you see a presence close by. It is the lonely night, a night driven by sorrow. The ache of mourning, the profound longing for a lost loved one, can feel like an open wound. The lonely knight was vanquished long ago. Since losing his other half, his journey has become one of desolation. Despite his imposing stature, he is harmless and will not defend himself from any attack. The player may kill the Lonely Knight if they wish. Doing so, the player may loot Lonely Knight's corpse. His equipment includes merciless warrior helmet, a severed finger, and a mace. Past the Lonely Knight, behind the high burial grounds, there's 6 tombs. One of them is hiding a secret path to the Pauper's catacombs. The following path is dangerous. Be prepared to either avoid or fight fierce enemies. Many of the creatures wandering the catacombs are not among the living. The Pauper's catacombs is a dark and unremembered resting place. It holds countless corpses, anonymous warriors, disgraced nobles, and common peasants alike. Bones are stacked high along the walls of the pitch dark. constantly leaking corridors where the heavy, pervasive smell of rot hangs dense in the air. In the catacombs, at a crossroad, stands a statue of a mother. An inscription at its base reads, "Our caring mother guides us through the dark. Her lips speak sweet, tender words, and her gaze reflects our own." To uncover the secret passage to the treasure room, locate a stone half-skull hidden in an ossuary. This ossuary is situated within an octagonal room at the end of a corridor, which is guarded by a mad bones. Once found, place the half-skull on the mother's statue. Past the mad bones, at the room's base, an open sarcophagus is situated before 7 skeletal stone figures. This gruesome weapon prompts a question. How did bones achieve these peculiar shapes? The relic's lore tells of warriors who, wielding bone weapons, eventually succumb to them, their flesh and bone merging to become one with the weapon. It is important to note that only 2 of these items exist in the world. Also, beware of the statues. Upon taking the item, the statues will animate and attempt to kill the person who took it. It is up to you to decide if it's worth the risk. The skeletal statues are known as the Stone Stalkers, ominous-looking sculptures that may come to life at some point. Once a prey is targeted, the statues begin their slow, silent pursuit, but only when unobserved. Despite their considerable size and weight, their movement is invisible to the ear. Should they manage to catch you off guard, their immense strength allows them to crush you almost instantaneously. Thus, beware the Stone Stalkers, and always look about you, and be wary of their presence. There are 9 of them within the catacombs, and 6 in just this one room. The subsequent page features a panel illustrating a stone scholar departing the capital. This departure signifies a journey for the pursuit of knowledge and personal enlightenment. We then continue venturing further into the catacombs. Huddled in a corner, you discover a knight, trembling and speaking fearfully of the dead. His dark green armor is strikingly ornate and still polished, suggesting it has never been tested in battle. However, his most notable features is the frog-shaped helmet he clutches anxiously, his voice filled with dread. "Old gods, please help me. The horror, I can't look at them. Rotten, dismembered, torn to shreds, and yet standing up, looking at me. Please go away. I can't help you. Stop this madness." The catacombs are a bony labyrinth. Every similar-looking hallway smells of death. A threat lurks around every corner, and the shadows dancing at the edge of your vision have never seemed so alive. The Frog Knight's mind has been captured by this threatening darkness. If you return to the spot a few hours later, you will find the knight, previously trembling, now completely still and lifeless, in the corner. He died because he was unprepared to confront the terrors of the darkness and the unknown. If you loot his body, you will find a ring of the 1,000 eyes. It allows the bearer to see those who are no longer among the living, but also to be seen by them. You also find exiled sentinel armor, an armor set from a faraway land. The armor is very heavy and full of ornaments, all painted in green with bronze detailing. A piece of written cloth is stored inside one of the gauntlets. Do not dare return without a cure. The knight has seemingly failed in his quest. At the very end of the catacombs, you will find yourself in a long tunnel. The tunnel is enveloped in silence. It has no doors or corners. The floor is full of rotting bodies and bones. The first thing you notice is the blinding light at the end, with a pleasing cold breeze coming out of it. As you near the tunnel's exit, a mound of decaying bodies before you begins to stir and writhe. The remains are gathering, casting a monstrous shadow that looms over you. The corpses move with an unsettling, almost human mimicry, attempting to replicate the warrior they once were, seemingly unaware of their new, grotesque form. This is the Stench Champion. True to its name, the odor emanating from this champion is unbearable. If you choose to engage, you must either hold your breath or reposition yourself to utilize the wind to your advantage. Exiting the catacombs, you find yourself on the outskirts of the Silver Swamp. A thick veil of mist envelops the flat, misty landscape of the swamp, where the path, marked by stone bricks, sinks into the pearly water. Weeping willows line the cloudy murk, creating a haunting sense of calm. The air grows warmer and softer, like a summer breeze. The water soaks your feet, its temperature so close to your own that it's initially difficult to discern. Eventually your gaze falls upon a figure resting in the distance, beneath the shade of a tree. "Over here, friend. I did not expect to find anyone in a place such as this. However, I must warn you about the swamp. It might look like a quiet, peaceful landscape to wander through, but it is far from that, I'm afraid. Once you enter the mist, there is no way out. You will get lost or, worse, you might fall asleep, which means certain death. Witchcraft, I assume, but if you seek a place to rest your bones, this is the perfect spot. Close enough to enjoy the bait without falling into the trap. But if what you desire is among those enchanted waters, I will not hold you back." He hands you the following item: Night Watch Mushroom, commonly used by the night guards to stay awake. If you wish to do so, you can rest alongside the night below the tree, but remember that your journey must continue. Leaving the drowsy night below the tree, you enter the Silver Swamp. Crossing the mist plunges you into a realm of seemingly eternal quiet, a silence broken only when your feet touch the water. Weariness settles over you, your eyelids grow heavy. The swamp is a domain of specters and deception, where the spirits of those who never returned from the mist are now cursed to drift forever across these shimmering silver waters. Within the mist, you may encounter the marching shapes of the Phantom Parade. They include the old man, smiling and giggling a little bit, covered in black. Tall figure, a dark cloak with no one inside, standing ominously. Damsel, with a sorrowful look, she stands in the distance, staring at you. Hag, the hood hides a solemn expression. She's accompanied by a small beast. Man in pain, screaming and shaking his head violently while the rest of his body is frozen. Corpse, lying on the water wearing a chain mail full of dry blood and wounds. Man looking back. He's always looking back, even if you try to meet his eyes. Fanatic, wearing some kind of ceremonial robes, covered with a mesh with jewels on his eyes. Faceless mother, holding a crying newborn with care. A young woman vomiting violently while moaning in agony. She's completely naked, leaning on the ground. Frightened woman, with a still expression of absolute terror, wearing a dirty frock with a urine stain. Hiding man, behind a tree, naked and emanating a threatening aura. After this list of the Phantom Parade, we are given some tips on dealing with the ominous apparitions of the Silver Swamp. The first of these warnings is of the shadow figure. After long hours of walking, there's still no end in sight. No structures nor other travelers, just the eternal mist. The presence of a shadow figure brings an immediate sense of dread, beginning as a pressure on the chest. If their piercing scream is heard, however, it signifies that fear has fully consumed you. Within the enveloping mist, all sound is muffled, save for your own footsteps. Yet your sight reveals faint, creeping silhouettes circling you. To approach these figures is futile. They vanish into a mere whisper. Never turn your back on the shadows. Next, we learn of the emerging visage. In complete silence, the hollow-eyed face of an old man slowly raises from the water. His visage is mask-like, with a jaw detached and crudely secured to his beard. You hear a voice inside your head, everlasting shadows casted by fibbing fires, rotting beds with silver sheets, a sanctum for the cold, a sanctum for the cold. Our eyes are backwards. The visage disappears. The longer you linger in the mist, the more weary you become, eventually struggling in a constant battle to remain awake. A night watch mushroom can offer brief respite, helping you stay conscious. Otherwise, a simple pinch will have to suffice. A shadowy figure approaches, distinctly different from others you've encountered. You can clearly hear the sound of footsteps and armor, and the figure is murmuring a mantra. My path is written. My sword is unbreakable. Repeating the phrase, my path is written. My sword is unbreakable. The shadow notices your presence as you draw near and promptly unsheathes its sword. Begone, shadow. Return to the fog. You won't fool me twice. This is the lost paladin, exhausted by the mist. They make a sudden, clumsy move, intending to strike first, but instead lose their footing and fall right before you. Their remaining strength is just enough to clutch your shoulders, and a faint voice manages to ask, "Why is my armor so heavy?" before they slump into the water, unconscious. With your opponent now defeated, you have a choice. Take their sword and deliver a killing blow, or let them live. The Paladin's sword is known as the Unbreakable Path. Its blade shines in a rainbow of colors and feels oddly light for its size. The struggle against sleep is now insurmountable. You experience fragmented moments of awareness amidst the nodding and sinking, desperately urging yourself to stay awake. There are times you feel you are pushing through the exhaustion, but the border between reality and fleeting dreams dissolves. When you finally collapse, a feeling of defeat and anger washes over you, as if the prolonged battle has ended, leaving you to await the inevitable. The silver lullaby has overpowered you. The cursed birthplace is a forsaken labyrinth of pure horror, where only the mad and the damned can freely navigate the pestilent tunnels. An unbearable stench permeates the air, and every shadow conceals a blood-starved monstrosity. Within these mines are secrets that must forever remain unknown to mankind. The initial feeling of desperation soon gives way to a strange comfort as the mist gently envelops you, and the water covers your skin like smooth silk. As sleep takes hold, you find yourself transported to a haunting dreamscape. The mist and trees are gone, replaced by a pitch-dark sky dominated by a shining crescent moon. Looking down, you discover the sandy bottom has transformed into a grim vista, a sea of corpses stretching into the distance, crunching beneath your feet with every step. The aspect of the dream appears as a twisted, silent figure, its movements a noiseless waltz. It gracefully draws its blade and attacks with inhuman speed. To defeat this Oneric foe, you must find the opportune moment to strike its slumbering visage. The aspect is as nimble as it is fragile. A single hit can shatter the illusion, yet its swift movements make the task exceedingly difficult. Should its stinger pierce your heart, the dream and your life will end. Your body consumed by the mist and lost forever. None have awakened from the dream. Resist not, and your flesh shall be banished, so your soul can rest under the peaceful waters among many others. When the dream is shattered, you awaken to a new reality. The mist is gone, replaced by the sounds of insects, water, and nature. A cold breeze washes over your soaked clothes. Submerged in the now clear water lies the memory of the stinger, a unique blade once wielded by the aspect of the dream. As you gain your bearings, you can distinguish a slender figure looking at you from the shore. The slim stranger is wearing a big cloak and holding a wooden mask to their face, slightly peeking through it. What a peculiar scene I am witnessing. You sure are one of a kind. Not only did you survive, but you somehow vanished the fog. I happened to be looking for someone. I thought it was you for a second. Then the mist suddenly dissipated. I've been entrusted to deliver an important message. I'm afraid I have no time to waste. You're quite an interesting fellow. May Dorvis guide your way. The man ventures into the swamp, leaving you behind. The fourth location, Flutewood Forest. A song of the occult. The summit of the hillock offers a stunning panorama of the Flutewood Forest, a view that emphasizes your smallness against the vast landscape. Distant whistling fills the air. The trees of the Flutewood are remarkable, capable of reaching heights of up to 70 meters. Their trunks are perforated with holes, side to side, which produce flute-like tones as the wind passes through them. On stormy nights, the entire forest unites in a spine-chilling melody, an orchestration powerful enough to terrify even the most courageous of souls. These are Vagrant's crown. All over the world stand these ancient stone monuments, each side marked with 4 solemn faces. Yet, time and erosion have rendered most of these stoic expressions unrecognizable. Travelers who honor these structures tie a piece of their hair or clothing to them. This practice allows subsequent adventurers to gauge how many people have journeyed into the area they are about to explore. A common local phrase, shady as a bald crown, warns of a place that is dubious or dangerous. It refers to a monument whose vagrant's crown is bare of strings, signaling that the area should not be trusted. In our travels, we may come across Murgo's devotees, consecrated to protect holy terrain and destroy possible threats. They live for Murgo's grace. To prove their trust, they often rip their guts out or cause lethal wounds to themselves just to witness the miracle. Their life will continue as long as they're faithful to their God. We are shown 2 figures. They are the holy seeds, both devotees of Murgo. The first is a sacred ground deacon, and the second is a sacred ground priest. Murgo, the progenitor of all plant life, is credited with every spark of non-human life, which sprang from his severed limbs. Offerings such as seeds, berries, and occasionally flesh are commonly placed in the scattered shrines dedicated to him throughout the woods. The trees surrounding these holy sites grow much taller. There are many hateful creatures that lurk among the Flutewoods. The Flutewood Forest is notorious for being both a haven for witches and a place of death. Few people know much about it, and those brave enough to venture into the woods rarely return to share their tale. This perilous woodland is home to 15 of these creatures. Mole Goblin, blind creatures with extensive jaws and prehensile noses, capable of detecting their prey from very far away. Giant acid slug. These monsters set their nests high on the top of trees and hang in cocoons waiting to drop and melt their prey in seconds. Old goblin. Elderly beings from a lost civilization. They usually hide to try and catch their victims off guard, then stab them to death. Sacred ground deacon. Murgo's limb, a holy seed, usually found escorting a sacred ground priest. Mud child, made from mud and dirt by the forest witches, to serve as their minions. Goblin knight. The goblin knight is a formidable foe, the last of the green hand order. Sacred ground priest, Murgo's limb, also a holy seed, wanders around the woods, guarded by deacons and preaching Murgo's words. Blind witch, the disembodied head of a witch that uses her long hair as wings, flies around her prey while chanting a sinister melody. Hemlet's beast, a nightmare beast like no other. Not a single warrior who faced this demon has made it out alive. Forest doll, creature made of twigs and resembling an elder. It moves slowly in a haunting manner. Walking shield, a spider-like creature that hides underground and uses its oddly shaped abdomen to lure its prey, and also as protection. Velvet witch, the most common type of witch, named after their pale velvet skin and known for their frightening hexes along with their appetite for children. Marionette swordsman, also called witches' blades, since they're mere puppets, primarily used as a weapon. Elder mushman. A mushman can help the adventurer if he wishes so with valuable information, but also mischievous advice to help you find death. Morning nightlight, ominously floating over bodies of water like lakes or ponds, while making a sound similar to a crying woman, known to be a bad omen. Deep within the woods, after a long walk, you stumble upon what seems to be the ideal place for a break. The building's exterior is curiously windowless, perhaps designed to block out the relentless forest sounds. No light or noise betrays any signs of life from within. Stepping inside, the gloom reveals a small fireplace and some rotting flour sacks. Everything is thick with dust, and the air is heavy with dampness. The moment the door shuts, complete darkness envelops you. You are finally able to find peace, hearing only the subtle, distant whispers of the wind shifting through the fireplace. You begin to rest, slowly falling asleep. A serene vision of an unseen ancient land fills your sleep. Crystal clear water reflects a cloudless sky, and the cool mist from a distant waterfall touches your skin. The air is alight with what seems like diamond dust. This tranquil scene offers calming comfort, but suddenly you are jolted awake, drenched in cold sweat. A brilliant, overwhelming fire illuminates the room, and the air is thick with a suffocating pressure. Making movement and breathing a struggle, muffled noise quickly escalates into a deep, aggressive, guttural voice, violently chanting an incomprehensible language that pierces your ears. It is a waking nightmare. Your heart pounds wildly. Confused and terrified, you struggle to comprehend the chaos. You attempt to leap up and flee, but your legs are weak and trembling with fear. As you rush past the fireplace, a truly unsettling detail catches your eye. Despite the intense light cast by the fire, you notice you cast no shadow. A growing sense of crushing debility accompanies the intensifying chant, as if each word adds a weight to your shoulders. If you listen to this chanting for too long, you shall be cursed for as long as you live. Nothing, not even the death of the caster, will end its preternatural influence. A punishment yet unworthy of thy sin, said Marco before inflicting the eternal curse upon Gailac. You desperately run towards the door, but it's locked, yet the wood is so rotten and damp that you should be able to break it down. With a few slams, it splinters off its hinges and breaks free. You tumble outside the door, collapsing onto the wet grass. The forest breeze chills the sweat on your back as you gasp for air, flooded with relief. Once you recover, looking back, you see the room in complete silence. But deep within the room's darkness, among the ashes in the fireplace, a tiny glimmer catches your attention. Closer inspection reveals a gruesome detail. The fireplace is cold, and the ashes are old, dusted with spiderwebs as if no fire had burned there moments ago. The shine comes from a deep red gem. If you lift the gem, you realize it is attached to something buried beneath the ashes. A mummified, severed hand, missing the tip of one finger. You can take the ring, if you choose. This is the ring of the singing fire. The bearer of the ring will be able to add burning flames to a weapon upon touching the steel for a few seconds. The effect only lasts 5 minutes. It can't be applied again until the steel loses all warmth. While inspecting the fireplace, you might notice a strong smell coming from the chimney. Don't look up. Leaving the lodge, you travel north for 2 nights. You will soon notice the path is dotted with small moss-covered ruins. As you venture deeper into the woods, these modest ruins give way to immense towers and castles, now entirely engulfed by nature. Even taking a closer look, you find nothing but mossy bricks. These structures are as ancient as the forest, their contents and history long consumed by the wilderness. Among the scattered remains, an imposing mausoleum stands out. As you draw nearer, you will begin to hear faint noises emanating from inside, audible between the whispers of the forest. Green Sun Ruins. Long ago, there lived a goblin princess. She, in early life, succumbed to a rare illness, an event that also marked the decline of the Green Hand Order. In her honor, and to safeguard her remains, the Green Sun Mausoleum was constructed. Though only a handful of goblins from the ancient era survive, they maintain a solemn vigil over the corpse of their beloved princess. These 5 remaining guardians dwell within Green Sun Ruins, each one marked on this map. In order, they are the Necromancer, who hides behind his many summons, which may be crazy, mad, or even insane bones. Trapped in the pit for many years, we have Hamlet's Beast, constantly hungry, resting on a nest of bones from those who fell into his domain. Next, we have Light Gobbler, an abomination made of limbs, capable of making you go mad with one look. A couple of goblin guards are in charge of Hamlet's Beast. They make sure nothing comes out of the pit. And last but not least, we have the Goblin Knight, the last of his kind. The great Goblin Knight awaits next to the princess's chamber, bound by his oath, the last line of defense. As you continue towards the ruins, you soon hear the echoes of a voice. If you follow the sound, you find the knight lying beneath a tree. He is clutching his bloodied stomach and grunting in pain. He looks up at your approach. I guess I'm not going to die alone. It's funny how even a stranger can bring solace when one is consumed by despair. I'm not the first one who will not come back from these woods. Nevertheless, I thought it would be different for me. I've sinned of impertinence. Would you do a favor for a dead man? Bring me the box. He points to a small entrance on the side of the building. Guarding the main entrance, known as the Green Sun Gate, is a massive red skeleton wielding a sword and shield. Fresh blood stains both the floor and the skeleton's sword. These red skeletons are larger and more powerful than the Mad Bones. To avoid a difficult fight, alternative entrances or openings can be found. Upon entering, your gaze is immediately drawn to a horde of skeletons encircling a tall hooded figure with glowing blue eyes. The necromancer instantly senses your presence. Stepping back, he slowly points at you, and a skeletal hand bursts from the earth, reaching for your leg. To defeat the necromancer, ignore the surrounding skeletons and focus your attack on him. This is the key to bringing him down. A successful strike will cause the necromancer to fall to the floor and rapidly dissolve into ashes, leaving behind only a single horned helmet. Once the creature is defeated, all remaining skeletons in the room will collapse and revert to their natural inert state. The relic that remains is known as the Prince of Bones, a ceremonial necromancer's helmet. While worn by a living person, its only effect is changing the wearer's eye color to blue. However, should the wearer die, they will be resurrected as a necromancer. In the rear of the room, at the base of a crumbling statue, rests a perfectly preserved ivory chest, covered in intricate ornamentation. It likely contains an object of significant value. The moment you draw near, however, the floor gives way. You grasp for the moss-covered bricks, but your fingers slide off and you plunge helplessly into the dark abyss. This descent is the only route to the underground chambers, a necessary fall to continue your journey. Sometimes it is through missteps that we find our true course. A bed of slimy bones breaks your fall. The stink of death clouds your senses. A pair of yellow glowing eyes casts a flimsy light into the macabre surroundings. To survive this voracious beast, you must avoid looking directly at his eyes. A single glance could petrify your skin, leaving you in agonizing pain and paralyzed for the beast to feast on your flesh. The beast's lair holds a collection of its victims' rusted weapons and armor. Among them, a single item catches your eye. A blue shield adorned with a large gleaming gem. Once the putrid blood is wiped away, the shield's surface reflects your image like a mirror. This is the shield of truth, and its reflective surface is the key to defeating the beast. Emerging from the pit, you find yourself in a dark chamber known as the Goblin Garden. A single beam of light descends from the trapdoor in the ceiling, accompanied by the sounds of murmurs and movement in the surrounding shadows. The goblins are frozen in stunned silence at the sight of someone climbing out of the pit. Paralyzed by fear, weak and frail, none of them dare challenge the warrior who has just slain the beast. Now you are free to proceed to the next room. After passing through the Goblin Garden, you enter a small chamber that opens onto a lengthy arched hallway. As you step in, your attention is immediately drawn to a source of light within the room, a chest radiating an unsettling deep green glow. You stare at the chest, anticipating the secrets it might contain. Be wary, however. A swift insect-like creature, the light gobbler, lies in wait. It lures prey with an intense light emanating from its gaping maw. As the victim approaches, the bewitching glow transforms into violent flashes. These flashes are intended to confuse and terrify. They can drive a person permanently insane, should you even manage to escape with your life. Inside the chest lies the royal spine, a gold-plated thrusting weapon covered in jewels. This weapon is clumsy to handle and very heavy. It is as useless as it is beautiful. It is said to be a sacred weapon meant only for the blue blood. Sunlight filters through the damaged walls and floor of the long ruined corridor, illuminating patches of deep green moss. A soft, delicate voice resonates within the space. Please leave them be. This is not a place for thy kind. Be gone, I beg. A menacing figure stands in the room's center. The final member of the Green Hand Blades awaits you. A faithful friend and protector of the princess's grave. Though he is wearing goblin armor, his imposing height does not fit the armor he wears. He carries a pair of wavy war axes and immediately advances upon noticing you. The Goblin Knight employs a slow yet aggressive fighting style. A direct hit from his axe will be lethal. Your best strategy is to carefully dodge or block his attacks until he tires, creating an opening to strike an unarmored part of his body. When you have wounded him sufficiently, he will drop to his knees. Exhausted, the Goblin Knight stares into a dark hallway at the back of the room for a moment, before shouting and rising again. The blood from his injuries now sprays like a fountain from the pressure. He has gone berserk. While he won't last long, he will fight with savage intensity until his last breath. If the player survives this final onslaught, the knight quickly collapses into a pool of his own blood and instantly stops moving, as if completely drained of life. The long battle is over. While his immensely heavy armor and axes cannot be taken, removing the upper part of his helmet reveals a surprising truth. The Goblin Knight was, in fact, a human. Absolute silence reigns over the ruins as you approach the final room. You peer into the darkness. At the far end, you can see pencil-thin light beams streaming through the small cracks and channels of broken stone. Tension hangs heavy in the air as you traverse the hallway. You begin to feel a subtle pressure on your chest, a feeling you can't quite place. It accompanies you until you step into the princess's chamber. The princess rests peacefully in her casket, a sleep that must remain undisturbed. Only those whose hearts are long gone should dare to approach her. From the princess, you can claim two relics. The first is a heavily rusted old crown. While you can tell it was once adorned with jewels, they are now gone. The second is a bronze box, intricately decorated and tightly sealed. An inscription in an unknown language is etched onto its back. As you leave the chamber, you glimpse a brief, unsettling scene. A pale woman, her face etched with sorrow, kneels before the dead Goblin Knight. Her skin appears lumpy and wounded, and her hair drifts as if submerged in currents of water. The princess mourns her lost knight. This vision lasts only but a second. Escaping the ruins, you will find the dying knight as you found him, now close to the end. You are given two choices here. You can either give him the box or keep it for yourself. If you give him the box, the knight will nervously take it, retrieving a key from his pocket. He then unlocks it. Inside, a brilliant green ring rests. As the knight grasps the ring, he instantly ignites in a burst of fire. When the flames die down, only a pile of ashes remains. If you decide to keep the box, then the knight will reply, "Oh, I see. I should have expected it. Too much to ask of a stranger." If at some point you force it open, the box will be empty. On the next page, we are shown the Immortal Blades. These are legendary swords, each blade unique and indestructible, forged by powerful magic that grants them special abilities. Throughout history, these mythical weapons have been wielded to vanquish demons and conquer emperors. Now they lie dormant, their power concealed in the various corners of the world. They are the Heel's Gaze, Sleeping Blade, Dragon's Wrath, Sword of Punishment, Demon Tongue, and the Dagger of Guilt. Beyond the ancient ruins, the path north leads into the forest highlands. A chill begins to set in, and the flutewood song intensifies into a more forceful, urgent sound. Continuing the ascent, the trees give way to a view. A spectacular sunset reflects upon a lake that cleaves the expansive highlands. The only connection across this vast woodland is a fragile wooden bridge, swaying slightly in the breeze. The journey through the highlands provokes introspection. As you walk, you question the extent of your travels. Was it far enough? Do you possess knowledge of your final destination? Or is that uncertainty intentional? This leads to a contemplation of fate versus free will. Is the path preset, urging us to walk blindly toward an inevitable conclusion? Or are we the architects of our own way? Does the true significance lie in the manner of the journey itself? Or is the value of the experience ultimately determined by the end point? The serene song of the flutewoods accompanies the dry crunch of leaves beneath your steps. Your philosophical musings are suddenly broken by a bizarre sight. A vagrant's crown, abandoned, possessing neither hair nor string. You recall that this presents danger. A dark shape is visible on a tree stump in the distance. As you get closer, you see it's a figure wearing a long skirt and a pointy hat. Something is unsettling about their face. A long black tongue unpleasantly emerges from beneath wrinkled lips. It becomes clear the figure is wearing a mask designed to look like a witch. Sensing your suspicion, a soft, quiet voice speaks from behind the mask. "Please fear not, traveler. Despite one's appearance, I am no witch. I am Vikura, daughter of Dharma. Normally I don't wear this kind of garment, but the witches took my younger brother, and I plan to take him back by infiltrating their coven. It's far from being a perfect plan, but I'm telling it to you because I need someone like you to clear the path. I would be very grateful." She hands you the following item: Crooked Fang, commonly used by the wandering angels to achieve inhuman strength and reflexes. Upon reaching the bridge, the first sight to capture your attention is the imposing figure positioned in the center of the fragile bridge. Armed with an axe and a shield, their cape whips wildly in the fierce, howling winds. As the menacing figure slowly approaches you from the opposite side of the bridge, the structure groans beneath each heavy step. The knight raises their axe, pointing it directly at you. As your foe closes the distance, you have the option to ingest the potent venom from the crooked fang. Immediately, your senses will sharpen drastically. You'll register the minute creaking of the wooden planks and the enemy's ragged breath. Your surroundings will slow down, and your eyes will be able to track subtle movements. You will be able to see the currents of air with clarity. You feel a surge of tension in your muscles as your blood boils. These enhanced effects will last for 5 minutes, after which you will instantly lose consciousness. The charging knight, with a war cry and raised axe, suddenly plunges into the clouds below. The old wood planks, unable to bear his weight, have given way. Surprised, you quickly regain your composure to assess the situation. If you are wielding the crooked fang, the immediate priority is to reach the end of the bridge before you succumb to exhaustion and fall. Across the chasm, the oppressive flutewood landscape has been replaced by a scene of clear skies and sweeping cedar-covered hills. A gentle breeze washes over you. After days spent navigating the relentless noise of the flutewood, once you leave, you enter a profound silence, broken only by the chirping of birds and the rustle of wind through the leaves. As you continue, you come to the Shade Sanctum, home of the unseen. An immense structure looms atop the highest hill, its shadow engulfing the landscape. As dusk settles, you arrive at the building. There is a sun etched with a grim expression above the main gate. The setting sun has almost vanished, transforming the pinkish skies into a fiery orange. Despite the demanding ascent of the sloping hills, you feel no fatigue, having rested. Instead, you find yourself enjoying the tranquil scenery. Upon arrival, your heart skips a beat as you approach the gate and see the colossal skeleton waiting inside. The silent keeper. Motionless, its moss-covered bones exude an unnerving presence, accelerating your pulse and making the air feel heavy. A high-pressure pounding immediately begins in your head, and your vision subtly fades if you try to look away. The gate directly behind the skeleton is unnaturally dark, blocking all sunlight. Not a single shape or dim light can be made out from the outside. Maintain eye contact with the skeleton, and its bones will eventually begin to stir. Slowly, the silent keeper raises both arms, opening its hands to reveal a pair of coins, one in each palm. You are confronted with two coins, one of silver, the other of mud. Your task is to make the correct choice. To proceed through the gate, you must not take, but instead deposit a coin based on your will level. If you have low will, deposit a silver or bronze coin in the left hand. If you have high will, instead deposit a mud coin in the right hand. Failing to correctly assess your will or placing the coin in the wrong hand will result in a curse. Stepping into the Shade Sanctum, you are immediately confronted by a long, shadowed corridor where 1,000 unseen eyes seem to watch your every move. The damp, cold stone permeates the air with its distinct earthly smell. It will take time for your vision to adjust to the oppressive darkness. This merciless labyrinth full of nightmarish hallways is a domain of deadly traps and true monstrosities, a place only creatures of the dark and the utterly insane dare to wander. The labyrinth's entrance is unsettling, dominated by numerous statues. Each figure is unique, yet shares unsettling features: deep hollow eyes and open wounds across the stomach. Some of these morbid figures even have silver coins lodged in their eyes. You find a mysterious symbol whose meaning is unknown throughout the labyrinth, etched into walls, ceilings, and small shrines. The first sighting occurs on a mural at the end of the 1,000-eyed corridor. Upon initial inspection, the mural appears normal, but a sinister effect soon becomes apparent. Every time you blink, the symbol briefly flashes, etched onto your eyelids like an optical illusion. The Shade Sanctum descends through multiple subterranean layers. As each level goes deeper, the darkness intensifies to such an extreme that the shadows repel even the light of flames. The labyrinth's deepest point remains undiscovered, if there even is such a point. In a nearby niche at the labyrinth's start, a knight encased in lavish emerald-studded armor leers at you. Noticing your approach, the figure speaks. "Please, someone unshackle me from this terrible curse upon the living. My mind is clouded with death. I cannot think. I cannot act. Why should I keep fighting? We're all doomed to turn into forgotten bones." You will also find a torch nearby, a useful item for your journey through the labyrinth. Initially, the room appears empty, save for a throbbing mass of flesh tucked away in a corner. a sight more unsettling than dangerous. Upon closer examination of the room, a subtle insect-like hum can be detected, intensifying as you approach the center. There, a strange-looking ring rests, causing the buzzing to become a deafening roar. Touching this ring binds you to a gruesome fate, to carry Keteret's white hives for the remainder of your life, an affliction that will eventually consume you, a truly terrible end. The ring is Keteret's grace. This ring will only be appreciated by those who seek the forbidden god's favor. Keteret, the wrath. The pain of bearing the burden is rightful for giving birth to the purest of blessing. A quick note here. The spelling differs from the initial page displaying the known gods. It is originally spelled Ketereth, Ketereth. Here it is spelled with an H, Kethereth, instead of Ketereth. The next room is guarded by an undead dark sorcerer. His mummified body is fragile and will fall apart with one blow, but his powerful rays are deadly and fast. The chamber will be utterly silent until you step inside. Then it will erupt with blinding flashing lights. A shield of truth would instantly destroy the body. If instead, however, you manage to evade the rays and get close enough, you can deliver a fatal strike or seize the necklace. Achieving either will defeat the sorcerer. Next is the Abyssal Garden, a hidden garden deep inside the labyrinth. The pale garden is bathed in the dim, beautiful light, silhouetting the surrounding flora. Ivory pillars encircle this serene space. Floating ominously in the center is a talking skull, swaying slightly. While harmless, the skull speaks only in riddles and nonsense. It appreciates the company of anyone who shares its admiration for the garden. Continuing, we find an empty room full of bricked-up windows. This room hides a secret within its walls. You must close your eyes or extinguish your torch and walk across the room until you find a chest. First, open the chest and grasp the handle within before opening your eyes. Now, holding what feels like a sword, you may finally behold Zugot, the unseen blade. Though more specifically, you see its ornate handle. Its shapeless steel is invisible to the human eye. Despite its invisibility, you feel its weight and length. This blade holds the power to slay the intangible, from shadows to ghosts, and makes your movements harder for enemies to predict. You may encounter a ferocious enemy in the Shade Sanctum. Lurking in the labyrinth's shadows is a macabre marionette, an abomination of wood and bone. This champion of the witches, known as the Puppet Without Strings, endlessly patrols the long dark hallways, crawling the walls like a spider. Crafted from pine and the remains of a great swordsman, the puppet's inhuman skill is a dark reflection of the life held within its bones. This champion of the witches is a marionette powered by a curse. To get away from the deadly marionette swordsman, you must extinguish your torch the moment you hear the telltale clacking of wood nearby. The marionette wields a poison-coated sword and moves with inhuman speed. If you wish to defeat it, you must smash its skull. Once its head is broken, the puppet will immediately collapse. A striking visage dominates one wall of the next room, which is overgrown with twisted roots and branches. Within a cavity in the mouth of the visage, there is a small pond of poisoned water. The chamber you enter has a vaulted ceiling and is supported by 3 colossal columns. Strikingly, this room is a perfect mirror image of itself. One of the doors leads to a brightly lit yet completely vacant section of the labyrinth, where you will ultimately face a shadowy reflection of your own self. Continuing, you find an amalgamation of lengthy hallways and corners filled with the sound of a familiar voice echoing within its walls. In the darkness, a shadowy, vaguely humanoid shape jerks and dances, its feet never making contact with the floor. The moment it is exposed to light, some sort of appendage on its back rapidly yanks the creature into the nearest patch of shadow. It repeatedly echoes the phrases, "It is here. I am me. I found it." A bony, ghoulish figure directs your gaze, forcing your eyes towards the far end of the cave. There stands the ghost of someone you never expected to see again, casting their own shadow. A powerful surge of emotion strikes your chest. Your irrational impulse is to race toward the figure, clinging to them forever, even as your rational mind struggles against the infinite mirage. Within the great room of the labyrinth's first layer, countless archways stretch as far as the eye can see. This chamber conceals a cursed warrior, once a courageous knight. His weapon consumed his humanity, transforming him into a blood-craving beast. Now he roams the maze, howling in agony, forever searching for fresh blood to satiate his axe. The warrior assaults with a frantic, wild energy, screaming as he swings his axe repeatedly. The key is to trick him into hitting a room column, lodging the axe in the stone. This leaves his arm exposed to a deadly strike. Once the cut is made, the warrior falls silent and still. Then a faint sound pulls your gaze to the severed hand, and you watch in terror as the flesh writhes and spasms, sprouting limbs and quickly scuttling into the darkness. The deepening. You may step into this passage without realizing it, as the hallway is shifting locations and is in constant flux. Upon entering, the hallway will strike you as unnaturally long, an endless corridor devoid of doors or turns. The wind intensifies, causing your torch to sputter. Turning back is futile, as the hallway extends infinitely in both directions. Soon, you'll become aware of footsteps echoing behind you, a sound that ceases the instant you do. Shine your light toward the sound of approaching footsteps, and you'll catch a quick glimpse of a shadow retreating into the darkness. Should you pursue it, the shadow will eventually tire of the chase and turn to face you. A monstrous visage will then materialize from the gloom. What an irksome little thing, that flickering light of yours. Hast thou considered joining the shadows, a warm and comfortable lodging regardless of what it might seem? Thou art welcome here, lost traveler. Extinguish thy fire and join our home. Should you accept, you will forever join the eternal darkness, no longer solitary as your mortal form is abandoned. Should you kindly decline, the being will depart silently. The rushing wind will cease instantly, and the mirage will dissipate. A large gate is now visible at the end of the hallway. A dark, waterlogged chamber holds a peculiar artifact concealed within a wall cavity. The artifact's function remains uncertain, yet an inscription at its base reads, "Butcher's Firstborn." To activate the artifact, you must sacrifice something. In exchange for the sacrifice of blood, wounds, or limbs, the following benefits are granted, though the resulting injuries will never completely mend. For blood, you gain the Butcher's Blessing. For wound, you gain Paladin of Flesh. For limb, you gain Meat Demon. The lower sections of the labyrinth are partially submerged in water. Crossing the flooded passageways of the Shade Sanctum is unavoidable. In places, the water is calf-deep and impedes movement. Disturbing echoes of something moving through the water can be heard throughout the corridors. A vast chamber serves as a nexus for several extraordinarily long hallways, each taking hours to traverse due to the impeding water. At the end of every hallway lies a bloated, decaying corpse, ceremonially garbed, its form distended by the stagnant flood. You see a room with a well. Stepping into the room, a strange feeling washes over you. Unlike any other space you've encountered, your torchlight reveals leaking walls, casting rippling reflections on the water below, and making the moist stone walls glisten. As you approach the central well, a pounding pressure begins in your chest, an uncomfortable sensation you can't quite explain. You hesitate, the well seeming oddly familiar. Yet the thirst for knowledge compels you to step forward and look into the reflection. The image that stares back fills you with dread. Deep, hollow, unrecognizable eyes in the body of a stranger, a figure of old bones and paper-thin skin. The illusion falters. We end with an epigraph, oddly reminiscent. A feeble illusion shatters in silence. The void swaddles you gently, welcoming you back. A life has been lived, and the dream is no longer. The old bones now slumber, waiting for the moon to shine once again. Here is a reminder of the beginning epigraph of Vermis. A corpse kneels beside a well. Mesmerized by the reflection of its living flesh, it wonders what could have been done and what could have been. And for as long as the moon shines, the feeble illusion will prevail. The cycle continues. Vermis 1 isn't so mired in mystery as his other work, Godhusk, but there are certainly some questions raised and things to think about. We've already covered its aesthetic influences and background, but perhaps we can now dive a bit deeper into its particulars. This section will include questions I have, which I may or may not have answers to, and my general analysis of Vermis as a whole, its story and my interpretation of it. Of course, granted, this is simply Vermis 1. Vermis 2 and 3 I have not yet read, so when I do, in those videos, I will continue my analysis. The first little mystery is the note on the page where we are first introduced to the graveyard. It reads, "House of Grey, House of Cold, House of 1,000 Doors, House of Many, House of None, House of Those No Longer Home." And it is signed ER. From what I've read, there's no indication of who ER actually is within the book. However, if you go to the HoloPress website, ER is listed as a translator and proofreader, not for Vermis 1, but Vermis 2. They are also listed as an assistant writer for Vermis 3. So this Vermis 1 reference is probably just a nod to someone Plastiboo likely knew and who eventually joined him in making Vermis. One of the next mysteries is the use of Roman numerals throughout the book. On my first read, I thought they were simply indications of certain locations, but then when I organized them, it didn't really make much sense. The numerals start at 4, the first introduced at the top of the page as we are entering Flutewood Forest. This made me think that they stood for locations because, although they're not labeled with the numerals, there are 3 locations before Flutewood Forest, those being Greengrave, Hopper's Catacombs, and Silver Swamp. There are also these 2 pages, Walking the Broken Path and The Uncrossable Path, which are labeled with the numerals 7 and 8 respectively. Most of the rest of the numbers come from within the final location, Shade Sanctum. They could be room labels as there's quite a few of them, and basically every room within Shade Sanctum is labeled with a number. These are just my best guesses, but I'm not entirely certain. Unfortunately, I couldn't come up with any better or more clear solution. Earlier, I had hypothesized that perhaps the Roman numerals had something to do with anatomy, as there is a structure within the cerebellum in the brain called the vermis, and it has 9 lobules or sections within, which are often represented using Roman numerals. There are some sources that say that there's actually 10. In those cases, they're separating the 9th lobule into 2 distinct sections, but both 9 and 10 don't really map onto the numbers found in the book. First of all, we're missing 1 and 2 entirely. Then we have numerals 3 through 10, some used multiple times, such as 4 with Fleetwood Forest and the Deepening, 7 with Walking the Broken Path and the Vaulted Ceiling Room, and 8 with the Uncrossable Path and the Abyssal Garden. And lastly, we have the numerals 12, 15, and 18 scattered within Shade Sanctum. I'm probably making a mountain out of a molehill, but I at least wanted to mention these numbers, just in case there was some deeper meaning that I wasn't able to parse. The next mystery isn't so much a mystery as it is fairly clear-cut, and that is the cyclical nature of Vermis 1. Vermis begins, a corpse kneels beside a well, and in the final pages we enter a room with a well. Going back to the first page, it reads, mesmerized by the reflection of its living flesh, it wonders what could have been done, and what could have been. And for as long as the moon shines, the feeble illusion will prevail. And on the final page, it reads, a feeble illusion shatters in silence. The void swaddles you gently, welcoming you back. A life has been lived, and the dream is no longer. The old bones now slumber, waiting for the moon to shine once again. We, the player or character in the story, are dead. After the game begins, we choose our flesh and our class. We awake in a crypt in Greengrave. It reads, once you wake up, you find yourself in a small crypt in the middle of the forest. It's cold and damp, but feels somehow comfortable. There are other hints throughout the book that we are not in fact alive. When we first encounter the Lost Paladin within the fog of Silver Swamp, he says to us, "Begone, shadow, return to the fog. You won't fool me twice." He thinks us an enemy, an apparition of the swamp. When we eventually fall asleep within the Silver Swamp, we enter Inception territory, a dream within a dream. In this slumber, we fight the aspect of the dream, and when we wake, we are greeted by a thin masked man. He says to us, "Now I've seen it all. What a peculiar scene I am witnessing." He is surprised, firstly, that we have defeated the aspect and escaped the dream, but also perhaps secondly, he is surprised that we are ourselves an apparition. When we defeat the Goblin Knight and finally enter the princess's chamber, there is a word of caution. The book reads, "The princess rests peacefully in her casket, a sleep that must remain undisturbed. Only those whose hearts are long gone should dare to approach her." Despite this caution, we continue to desecrate her tomb, unhindered and without consequence. How so? Well, perhaps our heart is long gone. Perhaps we were not alive to begin with. Later in Vermis, when we are finally exiting Fleetwood Forest and soon to enter Shade Sanctum, there is a page in which we are contemplating our journey. It reads, "While walking through the highlands, you reflect on the journey. Did you go far enough? Do you know where you're going? Perhaps you don't want to know. Is our path already decided, that we should walk mindlessly to eventually reach our destination? Or are we the ones to make the path? Is our way to the end what truly matters? Or does the value of a journey depend on the destination?" These poetic lamentations on fate versus free will are colored by the fact we now know upon reaching the end of the story, our final destination. We now know the cyclical nature of our journey, that it is an endless arc that follows a similarly cyclical wax and wane of the moon. It highlights the futility of our journey, that however valiant or malevolent our decisions or intention, we will still end at the well. A very nihilistic ending to be sure, but one that oddly fits the horror and dark fantasy aesthetic of Vermis. This point is driven home even harder when we look back at all the valiant knights that we encounter throughout the story. Most are lost or losing their minds, injured and dying, beyond repair mentally and physically. The classic knight, who is known to be unyielding in both moral virtue and physical prowess, is shown time and again to have been bested, their mind and body broken by the dark. Now, there's some narrative and aesthetic questions which I have wanted to discuss. We already spoke about how Vermis fuels our imagination, and through its RPG-esque design, begs us to enter its world even though its world doesn't exist as an actual game. Of Roger Calwa's 4 fundamental types of play, Vermis sits squarely in mimicry, which contrasts with Agon, or competition, focused on skill, rivalry, and structured challenge, like sports for example. The other 2, Alea and Ilinix, we can ignore for now. But if you're curious, Alea are games of chance, like roulette, and Ilinix are novel games that change our perceptions, like horseback riding or mountain climbing. Now I bring this up because Vermis in a way becomes a tool for creating metagames. Essentially, it invites the player to play that they are playing a game. Now mimicry or simulation is centered on make-believe, role-playing, and illusion. There's that word again, illusion. Where have we heard that before? Now follow me here. Vermis contains a kind of self-referential humor within it. Whether intentional or not, the hidden humor of Vermis comes into play when we recognize that the game is an illusion. From the very beginning, we are imagining this entire world. This entire journey in black and white is an illusion. Let us recall those first words at the start of the book. And for as long as the moon shines, the feeble illusion will prevail. And at the end of our journey, we leave the illusion. We leave the imaginary world of role-playing. Now, I'm not sure I'd go as far as to say Vermis is a satire or parody, but it certainly contains those preeminent fantasy tropes. Goblins, skeletons, and witches, valiant knights and a beloved princess, lost dungeons, and forbidden woods. It is a quintessential fantasy RPG. The self-referential humor of Vermis is that we are imagining we are on a journey in which we are imagining we are on a journey. We are layers deep in meta. This self-reference may be a way for Plastiboo to poke a little fun at his guidebook and tabletop RPG forebears, but it may also be unintentional. If it is intentional though, I think it's a stroke of genius by Plastiboo. It's subtle enough to go under the radar, but it's definitely there if you connect the dots. The writing in Vermis is one of the last things I wanted to cover. One thing I noticed while reading it was the fluctuation between command and description. As a game guide, you can expect some level of objective command, as in do this because X, Y, or Z reason, essentially to tell the reader/player what to do in a given location or situation. But Vermis routinely fluctuates into a narrative voice, as if you're reading a novel. I'm not sure if this was perhaps due to translation or an aesthetic artistic choice, but it again merges the world of game guides and that of Dungeons & Dragons, including both the command of a guide and the description that a game master would provide. One pertinent example would be the page titled A Long Walk. In a game guide, you wouldn't expect a passage such as this. It reads, "While walking through the highlands, you reflect on the journey. Did you go far enough? Do you know where you're going? Perhaps you don't want to know. Is our path already decided, or are we the ones to make the path?" It continues on in this manner, describing what we the player think and feel, and also throughout the book prescribed actions we take, as if we the player have no say in the matter. This contrasts with other sections where it's written as a choice. For example, at the top of the page displaying the Ring of the Thousand Eyes, it reads, "If you come back to this point a few hours later, you will discover that the frightened knight is now dead." In the next paragraph, it again reads, "If you loot the body, you will find the Ring of the Thousand Eyes." You see here the player is given the option. We are in control. It's as if we do this, unlike before, where it's like a narrative novel, and we're reading what another person is doing instead of us. And finally, with that, we've reached the end of this video. If you made it this far, then thank you so much for watching. It really means a lot to me. If you'd like to support me, then please consider liking and subscribing, and I'll leave my Patreon and YouTube membership down below. Again, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.